And there we go. Hey folks, it's Carrie. This is my second Full Tilt Friday edition. This time I'm going to be focusing on adaptation and how it's important for both personal development and professional development, and relate it to some experiences I've had running ultras and also running a business specializing in team building and transformation. So adaptation at its core, if you think about it, is particularly important because if you choose not to adapt to things quickly, the alternative is either stagnation and eventual extinction. So although we don't always like to adapt to new situations, if we don't do it, we become dinosaurs pretty quickly and die out. So we've had some of the real glaring world examples of this right now, which was happening with the pandemic, the COVID thing. With COVID right now, countries that have adapted quickly to the new reality have done social distancing, have shut down a lot of group interactions and wearing masks and that sort of thing, have adapted well, and they've seen things drop out a little bit. And currently right now in the US and Brazil and Russia and a few other places, the pandemic is like going off the charts. It's really a result of what happens when you refuse to adapt or you politicize adaptation, which is even worse. So who pays the price for not adapting? Almost always it's the person, the entity, the company that chooses not to adapt. So in life, and like when you meet with your friends, or in work, when you are getting together with people, you're having meetings, you're going to conferences, you're doing trainings, you're going to a location where everybody gets together, things have shifted a good bit. And adaptation has been pretty much forced upon us. Now, my business, it's called FullTilt Team Development, basically gets groups of people together and brings them through some sort of either leadership or transformative process. And that, since the end of February, has dropped off a cliff. So I've had to change things quite a bit in order to sustain through this time. If you are somebody who is, or a company who is unable to shift and adapt to the new situation, you're probably in a little bit of a grim place. You'll be going out of business fairly quickly. So just out of curiosity to the audience here, what are some of the things that you have found now that are effective in terms of connecting in meaningful ways with people for either business or social pleasure? What are the things that happen that you do that have changed things in a positive way? So how have you begun to adapt? Because that's a genuinely curious question. We do training and development work where we get people together. Some of that's transitioning to virtual, but always open for ideas and things like that. Like we have a virtual charitable event that we've put together, which is at its core kind of a cool process, which connects people to a philanthropic team building experience, but throws out the window the requirement that everybody is actually together. So that's one way that we're adapting to this. Another thing that you have oftentimes is these long-term projects where things suddenly shift. And an example of a long-term project, which is a personal project right now that I've shifted some of my attention to in order to adapt to new changing circumstances with COVID. Instead of normally traveling all over the place, now I'm very much fixed in one place for a little while, which I'm not normally. And I can devote myself a little bit heavier to training routine. So Lazarus Lake, Gary Cantrell, who does the Barkley Marathons and Big's Backyard Ultra, has put together the great virtual race across Tennessee that I'm actually working on right now. I've run across Tennessee in the 4-month period, which started at the beginning of May. It goes June, July, and August. The finish is at the end of August. And that's a 635-mile course. Then there was a suggestion, wow, the ultra people are kind of wild, so maybe they'll go all the way across Tennessee and then back again. And I'm close to getting back again now. I'm heading into little over 1,100 miles right now. And my goal to get across Tennessee and back would be 1,270 miles. I'll probably hit that in the next maybe week to 10 days or something like that. And I have to figure out if I'm going to do a third time. So I have, again, I've totally adapted my style of workout to this new situation. Ultra marathons are another thing that I run frequently. And sometimes things don't go as you foresee they should go. The best of plans go awry. So the Delirious 200, which happens in southwestern Australia, is a race that I did a year ago, actually a little bit more than a year ago. And it's a 215, 220 mile race on the Bibbulmun track. And I went out after training in mostly in winter conditions and snow and rain and that sort of thing, and getting out to Australia, where I thought it would be in Fahrenheit, maybe 75 degrees, 80 degrees, and in centigrade, like 25, maybe 24 degrees. And when I got out there and I started the race, I was feeling pretty good, run along right about where I thought I'd be. And I started to get into distress. And I got into distress because it was humid as just like a swamp. And it was 35 degrees, so up in the 90s. And it was just humid and hot. And my body was not having it. And I know if I kept on going, kept on pushing, it would have been breaking down, have been throwing up all my calories, all the progress I'd made would have been just tossed aside. So I had to do something different. I had to adapt if I was going to succeed and go through this race. So I did what I knew I could do and sustain and survive, which was just, okay, I'm going to back off the speed. I'm going to just slow down, march it out. And I just did that for most of the afternoon of the first day, and slowed my pace right down just as a survival mechanism. And as I got into that night, it was still hot. It was still sweaty. And I just waited and waited. And eventually my body kind of adapted to that. And I kept going, and my results changed a little bit, but my real objective was to finish the race, which is something that I did. And you can only do that by adapting. And this great virtual race, I know there's people who have been injured during, who are trying to figure out how to still complete with an injury. So if I'm out on a trail and I twist an ankle, which happens not frequently, but also not infrequently, I've got a couple choices. One of the things that I do is just keep moving. I walk a little bit and I start to think about how my body is reacting. And I have a theory, which has served me well to this point, which is if you injure yourself a little bit and you focus on that injury and you stop what you're doing, you allow that to inflame, then your ankle's going to seize up and it's going to really start to hurt. But if you twist your ankle and it's not a grave injury, it's an ankle twist, most people would stop. Most people would maybe elevate and ice and that sort of thing. But you just walk it off. You ask your body to keep adapting to the circumstances and the reality that you found yourself in, which is I've twisted my ankle. I'm 10 miles away from anywhere. I'm not going to have someone pull me out in a stretcher or helicopter down to long line me out. I'm going to eventually work it through, have faith that my body is going to adapt to this. And then eventually, by the time I get to the end of the run, I've almost always forgotten about the injury, the twist that I had. This happened last weekend, actually. It wasn't so bad after that. Another quick example of adaptation, the Moab 240, a race put on by Destination Trail Races with Candace. I ran the inaugural year, which is pretty awesome. And then I came back to pace a couple people I paced Jovica and Wes, who ended up running together, and they finished in second place. And I joined them about mile 150 and then ran about 100K of their race to the finish through the complicated sections. But on my way there, I learned that the course had changed dramatically. So the highest point in the race, which goes up over 10,000 feet in the La Salle Mountains, was no longer a part of the course. And they'd done a race day reroute through a lower portion that had a little less snow, so it could be marked and traveled safely. And when I showed up, I'd grabbed that GPX file and brought it along with me and put it on my phone so that when Wes and Yovica got to this place, which was their second night with no sleep in the middle of the night. It was about 3 a.m. when we arrived at the aid station where the paths diverged. I had the course there and was able to work with them to go through this really difficult portion of the night. We got in there, it was freezing, but we successfully survived the toughest part, the highest part of the course, some of the most technical terrain, a ton of climbing, and then did a descent down to an aid station, which basically broke the back of the race. It was the hardest part of the race. So that was, again, another good example of adaptation. Another adaptation survival mechanism right now with COVID and the pandemic, things change, and they change in such a way that if you're used to going out to the gym, or you've got some routine that involves going to class or doing yoga or something like that, chances are that's out the window, no longer available to you as an option. So that happened in my case as well, that we have a gym in the building, and I thought, okay, so what can I do? In May, I put together a push-up pyramid, and I thought, okay, I really want to get back in shape and try and get some good push-ups. And I committed to doing 100 push-ups the first day of the month, 110 push-ups the second day of the month, 120 push-ups the third day of the month. So I just kept adding 10 push-ups until the last day of the month. I think I'd added 300 push-ups to my initial 100. So I did 400. It's like 7,700 push-ups. And it felt great. In the beginning, I just needed to go through, and I talked last week about patience. I just needed patience to be able to get through everything. With this, the patience was making sure that throughout the day, I got my push-ups in whenever I could. And that was my form of adapting to, I can't do 400 push-ups, just cranking them out right out. It's impossible. So this last month in June, I did a little bit more of a scary thing, which was a pull-up challenge. And I started, I think, with 25 pull-ups on the first day. And I just spaced them out as best I could. I did sets of 5 or something like that. Then I added every day 5 more. So the next day, 30. And I think I worked up to 160 pull-ups. And that was kind of scary because I couldn't do that if you just put me up and decided, okay, you've got half hour to get 160 push-ups done, or 160 pull-ups done. They're a little tougher than push-ups too, because you need a bar. So just over there, hanging over our utility room in the kitchen, I've got a pull-up bar. So I would hit that as many times as I could, and I was successful in getting through that. I also think that if you are adept at adaptation, an adept adapter, you will almost invariably do well. You'll start to rise up from the crowd. You'll be one of the people who generates positive results. And it's basically one of the keys to success. So this is Carrie. Got a few people on. Hey, love your videos. Melbourne, Australia. Yay from Melbourne. Love that place. I need to go back. Inspirational trail running. I am so happy to hear that. It's a great place to be. Edward Harrell, let's see, adapting adventure is always something I've treated as going positive and maybe a little uncomfortable. Absolutely. Uncomfortable is where you find the growth vector. So that's how you make a muscle uncomfortable, it grows. You make a muscle uncomfortable, it's able to last longer. That's exactly what you do. Alfredo's getting into long distance running. Adaptation is the perfect thing for running right now if you can. And Randy, my buddy Randy is here. Just about to hit the sack. You're on live. Hang around. Well, I hope you have a good night. Justin, hey, good to see you. And yeah, positive impact, Alfredo. That's exactly what I'm looking to do. Please pace me in my first ultra. We'll see. You got to tell me about it first, and I consider all options. So if there are any suggestions for future episodes, post them in the comments. I'd love to see it. This is going to go onto my channel. So post in the comments, give me a thumbs up, subscribe. I am this close to 10,000 subscribers, which is a bit of a benchmark for YouTube. So I'm hoping to crack that this month. I think I have less than 100 subscribers to go to get there. So maybe this video put me over the top, and I'll have adapted from the sub 10,000 subscriber range to the 10,000 plus range. So thanks for your time. If you feel like following me on Instagram at Kerry Ward, that'll be down in the description. Also, you can follow me on Strava. And if you really want to do something exceptional, you can jump on to my Patreon, which is down here, and offer some sort of support. I'm looking, my next purchase is probably going to be a better web camera, because I think that the definition is okay on this, but I think we can do a little better. So I'll probably get a better webcam instead of using the one off the laptop. So Kerry, peace out. Thanks everybody for watching. We're just going to end the stream here. Good night.